PHI 102, Part 2, Informal Fallacy. From the foregoing study sessions, we have been able to show that for us to have a good argument, the premises must support the conclusion. When the premises of an argument fail to support its conclusion, the argument is said to be bad, or more technically, fallacious. A fallacy is therefore a type of argument that may seem to be correct, but that proves on examination not to be so. From the foregoing, it is clear that a fallacy has two features. First, it is an argument. Secondly, its premises provide no support to the conclusion, though they appear to do so because the argument is psychologically persuasive. There are formal and informal fallacies. Formal fallacies are the types of mistakes we make in our attempt to construct syllogisms, that is, deductive reasoning, logical argument with two premises and a conclusion, or in using logical symbols. While informal fallacies, on the other hand, are the types of error in reasoning that occur as a result of carelessness or inattention to the context of the propositions constituting an argument. At this level, we shall focus on informal fallacy, which can be classified into three broad categories. 1. Fallacies of relevance. 2. Fallacies of ambiguity. And lastly, fallacies of presumption. Study Session 4. Fallacies of relevance. Introduction. In this study session, we shall explore fallacies of relevance. These are fallacies whose premises appear to be relevant to the conclusion drawn, but on close examination are simple, not relevant. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to state at least two defining characteristics of fallacies of relevance. The appeal to force. Argumentum ad baculum. This fallacy is committed when one resorts to the use of truth to cause the acceptance of a conclusion, especially when evidence or rational methods fail. In other words, this fallacy is committed when an argument relies on the threat of force, though the threat may be veiled and not necessarily be physical. For instance, I will be committing this fallacy if I threaten to fail students who disagree with my political ideologies. This means that the fallacy can be committed by someone in a position of power if he uses threats to coerce his opponents to accept his preferred proposition. The following are examples of arguments that commit this fallacy. 1. All fresh students in the Department of Philosophy should attend my wedding if they want me to be lenient in assessing their exam scripts. 2. If you do not agree with my political opinions, you will not graduate from this university. The appeal to pity. Argumentum ad misericordiam. Literally, misericordiam means a pitying heart. Thus, this fallacy occurs when the premises of an argument plainly relies on mercy, generosity, altruism, and so on. For instance, a lawyer might use the special circumstances of his client, an offender, to justify leniency in punishment. In short, when the lawyer emphasizes the unfortunate consequences that will befall his client, instead of looking at the overwhelming proof of his guilt, he has committed this fallacy. The following passages commit this fallacy. 1. I am a single parent, solely responsible for the financial support of my children. If you give me this traffic ticket, I will lose my license and be unable to drive to work. If I cannot work, my children and I will become homeless and may starve to death. Therefore, you should not give me this traffic ticket. 04, 2012, page 14. 2. I employ the jury to temper justice by mercy. Though my client, barely 18, He's accused of killing his mother and father with an axe. I plead for leniency on the grounds that he's an orphan. The appeal to emotion. Argumentum ad populum. This fallacy is committed when, instead of using evidence and rational arguments, you appeal to the emotion of the people to win their assent to a conclusion. The appeal to emotion, therefore, relies on expressive language and other devices to arouse strong feelings that may lead an audience to accept its conclusion. This fallacy is a device often used by politicians, propagandists, and is common in commercial advertising. The following are examples that explains this fallacy. 1. The wisest men and women in Yoruba history have all been interested in Ifa. Obas, queens, and regents of all epochs in Yoruba land have believed in it and have guided the affairs of their people by it. Therefore, those who say that Ifa is not a science are mistaken. Bello, 2007, page 53. 2. In the last presidential campaign, a mammoth crowd welcomed Goodluck Jonathan in each of the northern zones. In the last election, he led the other presidential candidates with very wide margins and became president. Therefore, those who accuse Jonathan of financial misappropriation are not sincere. They appeal to inappropriate authority. Argumentum ad verecundiam. This fallacy arises when we appeal to the opinions of someone who in fact does not have any legitimate claim to authority in the matter at hand. In other words, it involves the mistaken supposition that there is some connection between the truth of a proposition and some feature of the person who asserts or denies it. Ofo, 2012, page 42. For instance, it would be fallacious to appeal to the opinions of a movie star on whether taking a brand of beer is good for the body or not. Someone with expertise in food nutrition will be the appropriate authority. Thus, when the truth of some proposition is asserted on the basis of the authority of one who has no special competence in that sphere, the appeal to inappropriate authority is a fallacy committed. Copy et al., 2006, page 374. Now, let us consider these examples. 1. Philip Ogundeji, a professor of linguistics and African languages at the University of Ibadan, believes that the stars revolve round the earth in a perfect circle. Therefore, the stars revolve round the earth in a perfect circle. 2. But you can doubt that air has weight when you have the clear testimony of Aristotle, affirming that all elements have weight, including air, except fire. Argument against the man or person. Argumentum ad hominem. This is a fallacy in which the argument relies on an attack against the person taking a position. In other words, when the thrust of an argument is directed at someone who is defending a conclusion in dispute and not the conclusion itself, the fallacy committed, id ad hominem. There are two major forms of the arguments ad hominem, namely the abusive and the circumstantial. The abusive variety of ad hominem is committed when one attacks the person who made an assertion, instead of giving him reasons why the assertion should not be accepted. The circumstantial occurs when one argues against the circumstance of the opponent, instead of assessing the dispute in question. Now, let's consider the following examples. Abusive. 1. Mr. Brown's argument for premarital sex should be dropped because he's a womanizer. 2. Darwin's thesis of natural selection should be discarded as a work of fiction because he's a racist. Circumstantial. 1. Reverend Father John should accept my position that abortion should be abolished because this is compatible with his faith as a Catholic. 2. Former President Bush wouldn't approve of President Obama's economic policies because he's a Republican. appeal to ignorance, argumentum ad ignorantiam. This fallacy is committed when one posits that a proposition is true simply because it has not been proved false, or that it is false because it has not been proved true. Bello 2007, in page 52, adds that this mode of argument is commonly used against the existence of witches, spirits, and other forms of extraordinary phenomena. The following passages commit this fallacy. No one has conclusively proven that there is no intelligent life on the moons of Jupiter. Therefore, there is intelligent life on the moons of Jupiter. Ofo 2007, page 43. 2. The alarmists have not succeeded in proving that the toxic and radioactive materials dumped at cocoa, that is delta state, are dangerously harmful to human life. The materials are therefore perfectly safe. Bello 2007, page 52. Irrelevant conclusion. Ignoratio enleci. Ignoratio enleci translates to mistaken proof and is a type of fallacy in which the premises provide justification or grounds for a different conclusion than the one that is proposed. It tries to establish the truth of a proposition with premises which actually provide support for an entirely different conclusion. The following are examples of this fallacy. 1. The golden rule is basic to every system of ethics ever devised. Everyone accepts it in some form or the other. Therefore, people's lives are guided by legislations. Ofo 2012, page 43. 2. Capitalism is desirable. For at one time, all utilities were state-owned. Now, more and more of them are being commercialized or privatized. The Structural Adjustment Program, SAP, moreover, is based on capitalist principles. We are well on our way to full-blown capitalism, and its complete triumph is inevitable. Bello 2007, page 51. Black or white fallacy, also referred to as fallacy of false alternatives. This fallacy is committed when it is falsely assumed in an argument that only two alternatives or propositions are possible in regards to a certain issue, or when the possibility of a third alternative to the two already allowed is ignored. For example, 1. He who is not a PDP member is against Jonathan's regime. Oshiomhole is not a PDP member. He is therefore against Jonathan's regime. 2. He who does not preach the word of God is an antichrist. Bisola does not preach the word of God. Therefore, he is an antichrist. Study session summary. In this study session, we define the term fallacy as an error we commit in reasoning. We also pointed out that informal fallacy can be classified into three broad categories, such as fallacies of relevance, fallacies of ambiguity, and fallacies of presumption. This study session was devoted to fallacies of relevance, whose premises appear to be relevant to the conclusion drawn, but on close examination are simply not relevant. Under fallacies of relevance, we discussed the appeal to force, which is committed when one resorts to the use of threats to cause the acceptance of a conclusion, especially when evidence or rational methods fail. The appeal to pity, which occurs when the premises of an argument plainly relies on mercy, generosity, altruism, and so on. The appeal to emotion, which relies on expressive language and other devices to arouse strong feelings that may lead an audience to accept its conclusion. The appeal to inappropriate authority, which arises when we appeal to the opinions of someone who in fact does not have any legitimate claim to authority in the matter at hand. Argument against the man or person, a fallacy in which the argument relies on an attack against the person taking a position. Appeal to ignorance, which is committed when one posits that the proposition is true simply because it has not been proved false, or that is false because it has not been proven true. Irrelevant conclusion: a type of fallacy in which the premises provide justification or grounds for a different conclusion than the one that is proposed. Black or white fallacy, which is committed when it is falsely assumed in an argument that only two alternatives or positions are possible in regards to a certain issue, or when the possibility of a third alternative to the two already allowed is ignored. End of study session 4. Thank you for listening.